Hello and welcome to this PowerDesigner demonstration. Today's topic is on using the mapping editor. When trying to understand your BI architecture, it's useful to know how the source data maps to the data in the data warehouse or data mart. In this demonstration, we'll take a look at the mapping editor, we'll look at the wizard, we'll look at how to map source and target information together both automatically and manually. To begin, let's take a look at our workspace on the left. We have two models. One defines the source, where the data is coming from, and the other defines the target, which is where the data is going to. The source is a standard transactional schema designed for collecting large volumes of information. And the second one here is a simple star schema. Now here's an important point. Before you start the mapping process, you need to be in the target model, not the source model. And since we're in the target model here, we can start the process now. We'll launch the mapping editor and create a map between these two models. Now the mapping editor is a wizard-driven process. The first step in the process is to name the data source. Since this represents our transactional environment, I will name it accordingly. Although in this example we're mapping two physical models, you can use this editor to map many other different model types as well. In this step, we have to tell PowerDesigner which model represents the source schema. In this simple example, we're going to use one model to represent the source. However, you could use multiple models to represent a single source. The wizard will automatically create a default mapping based on names. If the source and the target have the same name, the mapping editor will map them together. You can uncheck the box if you want to manually determine the mapping. Now that the wizard process has concluded, let's take a look at the mapping editor window. On the left-hand side is the source model, so that's where the information is coming from, and we chose this in step 1 of the wizard. On the right is the target model, which is where we started the process, and that's where the information is going to. And below is a pane that contains all the details about the mappings. So let's expand the node on the left and take a look at the schema for our source. Here we can see all the tables and columns that were present in our source model. You can also see that there are lines and dotted lines connecting columns over to the right side, which is where the target information is. So let's take a look at that next. We can see here that the wizard mapped all the corresponding columns with the same name. Notice how zip and zip code did not get mapped. What the wizard did is it searched the entire name string, not just individual words, and looked for a match. In this example, the customer name in the mart is really a concatenation of the first and last names from the source data. Now we can document this manually by dragging and dropping these columns. The mapping editor can be used to map simple transformations like this one. However, for more sophisticated ETL documentation, I'd use the data movement model instead. The data movement model is included with PowerDesigner Information Architect or Enterprise Architect. In this example here, the unit price column in product has the same name as the unit price column in the sales facts. However, they didn't get mapped, and that's because they're not in the same table. So what happens is PowerDesigner evaluates a match based on table first and then maps based on columns second. So we can easily fix this just by dragging and dropping, just like we did previously. Now let's take a few minutes to look at the mapping details in the pane below. At the table level, we can choose the Select tab to view the SQL Select statement. Now this can be useful for prototyping ETL jobs. Now here's a quick tip on how you can tell whether a mapping has been applied to a model. All models that have mapping will have a data sources folder. You can see here on the left in the workspace that we have a folder for our target model. Double-clicking the sources cylinder within the folder will get you the properties for the source. Clicking the Models tab will tell us what model or models represent the source, because remember, you can have more than one model represent a single source. Now, by establishing the mapping between a source and a target, what we've done in PowerDesigner is actually created links to the source and the target. And by establishing these links, it allows us to do impact and lineage analysis against sources and targets. Now let's suppose we're interested in looking at the lineage of the last name column. Here we can see the column mapping information in an expandable node tree. Just by clicking the nodes, we can take a look at more details. To see all of this information in a single comprehensive picture, we can click the diagram button and PowerDesigner will produce a pictorial example of this node tree. And so here you can see a view with all the connection points laid out in a single diagram. So what we've done today is we've taken a look at a source model and a target model. One was a star schema, one was a transactional schema. We used the mapping editor wizard to link the two together. We established some mappings automatically and others we established by doing a drag and drop. And we were able to look at the impact and lineage analysis of all of this information so that we can get an understanding of how everything ties together. So that concludes this PowerDesigner demonstration on working with the mapping editor. Thanks for watching.